Welcome to today's webinar, everyone. My name is Megan. I'm on the product marketing team here at Cockroach Labs, and I'm here with Lakshmi and David. So I'm going to let them say a few words to introduce themselves.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lakshmi. I work on the product team here at Cockroach Labs, and I'm the general manager for our cloud offering, which is CockroachCloud. David,
hello,
can you introduce yourself?
Yes. Hello, my name is David. I am cloud developer. I am based in Spain. And I wanted to say thank you to Lakshmi and Megan and the Cockroach team for inviting me today to join the webinar. It's great to be here.
Great.
Perfect. Before I pass it off to Lakshmi and David to talk a little bit about David's experience using CockroachCloud, I just wanted to do a few little pieces of housekeeping. So the first one is you'll see a Q&A panel at the bottom of the screen. Definitely do ask questions in that panel throughout the webinar. So if any questions arise, we'll be keeping an eye on that and addressing them. And then at the end, when the webinar ends, you'll see a survey, and please fill that out. It's really helpful for us to hear your feedback for all of our future webinars. And then finally, we'll be sending out a recording after the event so everyone can watch it again, watch it as many times as you want. So that's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for being here today. And now I'm just going to pass it off to Lakshmi and David.
Great, sounds good. Thanks again for joining, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're based. Like we said a little bit earlier, David was one of our first early adopters of CockroachDB. So they've been working with CockroachDB for a few years now. And when we released our cloud offering, they were, of course, one of our first customers for CockroachCloud. So I'm very excited and grateful that David is making time in his busy schedule to share his experience with us. So David, can you share a little bit about your team and the kind of work you do at your company and what your day looks like? Okay,
as I said before, I am backend developer. I work for an electronic access control system manufacturer. I belong to the cloud team, and basically we are developing cloud-based solutions for the company. And I think that our technology stack is pretty similar than the one you are using there in CockroachDB. We are using Go, Docker, Kubernetes, web cloud platform services, following a microservice philosophy.
Great, sounds good. I remember when I was talking to someone on your team early on, you know, the fact that we use very similar stack was one of the things he kept in mind, like the fact that we also use Go and your team uses Go and Kubernetes and Docker. That was one of the criteria that made the team feel a little bit better about using CockroachDB. Great. What kind of applications do you have today that run on CockroachDB?
Basically, all the core applications we are developing in the cloud team in my company work with CockroachDB. But we have also another microservices that are also working with CockroachDB. For example, a distribute logging application, a dynamic discovery service, and so on. But sometimes you have to also use the third-party libraries that might need to store state to use a database to function. For example, we are using an OpenID Connect provider that used to have only support for MySQL and PostgreSQL. And following this philosophy of only using a single database, so we have only to use and to maintain a single database, we added support for this OpenID Connect provider. And since then, we knew that more companies are using the same combo, CockroachDB, plus this library, so we are very happy about this.
Yeah, no, I remember that was one of your early requests, and we're grateful that you did all the work to make CockroachDB work with OpenID. It's exciting to hear that a few others from the community are also using it. What is your current CockroachCloud setup? Like I said, you were, I think, the first 10 customers who ended up using CockroachCloud and gave a lot of feedback on, what should the console look like, what should that process look like. So yeah, what does your setup look like? I think our audience would be particularly interested in the multi-region setup.
Yes, we have 3 regions, one in Asia, another one in Europe, and another one in the US. We have 3 nodes per region, so we have 9 nodes. in total. And using this global Cockroach setup is a huge help for us. We can take advantage of some CockroachDB special features for this, like follower reads, geo-partitioning, automatic follow the sun, and our customers this way can have the same experience wherever they are.
And you run in GCP, is that correct? You're in Google?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, we are also in this GCP.
Thank you. How did you determine that you needed a multi-region database for your application? Because it's not always obvious that you need one. So how did you come to that decision?
Well, our customers are spread all over the world, and we needed to give them the same feature set and the same experience wherever they are. We wanted to give them the same experience, and also our customers might be also spread all over the world. So with CockroachDB, we can give them the freedom to choose where they want to store their data. For example, to comply with some data regulations as GDPR in Europe and all these kind of regulations that you have to have your data stored in Europe for Europe customers and so on.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty common pattern that we hear from customers, like GDPR, especially for European customers, is huge, right? You want to keep data to a specific locality. And then increasingly, most companies do have customers kind of everywhere in the world. And therefore, sorry, I'm getting distracted by a Q&A question here. But just to finish that thought, just to provide the same level of latency to all of the different customers around the world. I'm going to check on a Q&A that's directly related to the question. We have a question from Miguel. The question is data residency, so keeping data close to where you're to a particular geography, locality, like what you were just saying. Is data residency an issue for you? Does that make sense, David? Yeah. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yes. Because all of our customers are spread all over the world. For example, people that is located in Europe might need to keep the data only in Europe to comply with some regulations as GDPR, or maybe some people from the US don't want their data outside the US for whatever quality issue or I don't know. So we are using it. Yes.
Yeah, and you specifically use partitioning to keep geo-partitioning to keep the data in specific localities?
What? Sorry.
How do you keep, like, what is the feature that you use specifically to keep the data in one region?
The geo-partitioning.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. We have another follow-up question from Frankie. The question he was saying, I didn't understand the 3 to 4 features that David mentioned regarding multi-region capabilities, like geo-partitioning. Could you repeat the capabilities? So I think you were talking about the specific features that you use for multi-region. So follower reads, can you just repeat that list?
Yes, more or less the overview is that with CockroachDB, you can choose where you can store your own data, but you can also give your customers the ability so they choose where they want to store their data also. So it's very, very good for our use case.
And you had also mentioned follow reads and CDC, which we'll talk a little bit about that, but those are the 2 other features that he had mentioned that he specifically talks about. And we'll get to CDC in a bit.
Yes. For example, with the CDC, we try to decouple some requests from the request path from the hot path and give our users an early OK, and basically do the heavy work on the background and be eventually consistent. But we are using CDC for much more things. For example, we are replicating read-only data as materialized views for better performance and to keep our queries simple, easy to understand, easy to change, avoiding multiple joins and avoiding complexity at all. At the end, we are not database administrators, we are developers. So we wanted to avoid all this complexity. We are using also for cache eviction to update or to delete data synchronously. So it's a huge plus for us.
Yeah, so just to summarize, to specifically answer that question, it sounds like David's team uses geopartitioning, CDC, and follower reads, which are the three specific features that he uses for this multi-region application, the distributed locking service. Great. Well, we kind of just specifically touched on this. Are there any more questions specifically on this? All right, we'll keep going. Thanks, David. Specifically on CDC, I think you have an interesting story here because you talked about how you actually use the core version of CDC, even though on CockroachCloud you do get all the enterprise features, so you can use the enterprise version of CDC. But for your team, the core version actually made more sense. So can you speak about how you use that for CDC?
Yes, we felt that the enterprise was very tight with Apache Kafka. And this is okay, but we felt that it was a very heavy and complicated for our use case, as we don't need a strict ordering and we don't need also a exact once delivery. So the core option gave us more freedom to use whatever messaging broker we want to use. For example, GCP PubSub. And that's our choice.
Did you say GCP PubSub is what you end up using?
Yes, we are using GCP PubSub along with CDC core. Yes.
Got it. Is there, seems like a question around that? Got it. Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Can you speak a little bit about what is the hardest part of building a multi-region application so far? Because this is something you've been working on for about a year now, maybe more.
Yes, yes. Well, having data and users spread all over the world, it's pretty hard by itself. And Cockroach can help with some of the features mentioned before. But also you have to deal sometimes with third-party libraries that might be Postgres compatible. But if you want to use CockroachDB syntactic sugar for multi-region capabilities, this might not work. So you have to deal with it or try to integrate or to attract that tool to CockroachDB. That is what we did, for example, with this OpenID Connect provider.
One of the questions is like when we talked about how you have 9 nodes in 3 different regions. One question is, what is the size of the data, size of the database? Like how many queries or transactions per second? How big is your kind of workload?
To be honest, I don't have numbers, and I am not sure I could give this kind of information. So yeah. I have to skip this. Sorry.
That's totally fair. That makes sense.
We can follow up later.
Yep, we'll follow up on that a little bit later. Cool. I'm curious, as somebody who's built multi-region applications, if there's any advice you want to share with developers who want to build a global application like yours.
Yes, as I said before, building a global application is very hard. You have to think about a lot of things, about the latency, about the customer location, data synchronization, networking, data regulations, and many more. So CockroachDB is a very helpful tool for us, and specifically the cloud version, the cloud one, CockroachCloud, because we can focus on our actual work as developers to develop and not to having to worry about the operations, database administrations, loads, and all these kind of things.
What would you say is the hardest part of building this application?
More or less what I said before, having to manage a lot of data and this kind of database, big clusters. So this is the reason why we choose CockroachCloud to avoid all this kind of burden and focus on our daily work.
Great. I think there are actually a number of questions from the Q&A, so I'm just going to sort through them as I sort through them. Bear with me for a minute. So one question that we have here is maybe for later, but we would love to hear about deployment options. Is there a Terraform operator? I think that's a question for me, so I can answer that.
Okay.
So we don't have a Terraform operator today for CockroachCloud, but that is on the roadmap, and I'm happy to follow up on that. Can we get the emails of the people who asked the questions? Great. Okay. So Miguel, I'll follow up on that. It's something that people have requested, so I'm curious and interested to learn a little bit more about what specifically that you're trying to solve with it. One of our goals for this year is definitely to expose the APIs that would allow you to create the clusters, CockroachCloud clusters through this UI. So rather than going in through the UI and actually clicking the nodes in the cloud provider and so on, just being able to call the API. So internally, we are working on that, and then we expect that to be kind of customer facing sometime this year, broadly speaking, with the usual caveat that roadmaps change and so on. So that might help a little bit about your deployment question, but I'll follow up on that after this webinar. Great. And then there's another question. Can you scroll this down? Okay. How do I? There we go. Frankie was asking, are there specific hotspots in the data access and how you dealt with them? David, are you able to answer that, the question about hotspots? So just for context, this would be a case where the same rows or the same tables in the cluster gets repeatedly read or write, so it creates a hotspot.
You can have some hotspots. For example, when a lot of people is trying to read the same data in some place.
Yeah.
And this is covered by CockroachDB with this follow the sun and follow the workload feature. So they kind of move the read holder closer to the users. So the data access is much more faster compared to another database if you have to go to the US and back, for example, to have a result.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense. It sounds like follow reads does solve that specific hotspot problem for you. Yes. In your case. Yeah. And interestingly, on the topic of hotspots, one of the feedbacks for our web UI team, which is the dashboard where you can see kind of your performance and latency and various other metrics, is being able to see when hotspots occur. Like just having that observability to see it is an important piece of it. And I know that there's a separate team that's been specifically working on that. So I'm happy to follow up on that, Frankie, if you're more interested in learning about that specific topic. Another question, I think we kind of touched on this, but it's around, what are the limitations or bottlenecks you faced? I think David kind of talked about some of the challenges, but I don't know if there's anything else you'd like to add.
No, not really. I think that with the feature set we have right now, we didn't experience any bottlenecks yet, but maybe we could in the future. Nothing to mention right now.
Yeah, one of the things you mentioned early on, in case people didn't hear, is when you do start on an application like this, the various third-party tools that you work on and making sure that integrates and works well with your cluster and database is an important piece. And David spoke specifically about the Open Connect and Hydra, right?
Yes, Hydra.
Hydra, yeah. We have another question that is, how do you debug your deployment?
Okay, first of all, we have a lot of tests before deploying. We are using a Datadog tool. It's called Go TXDB, and this
Can you repeat that one more time? What's the name?
that Datadog tool. It's called Go TXDB.
Okay.
And this is basically a tool that lets you make some queries in tests without modifying your database. And it's a very great tool for us. So we have a lot of tests. And once the code is deployed, we have a lot of traces, query traces. We are using OpenTelemetry for that.
And you also have a staging environment and a production environment, right? You have two separate instances, is that correct?
Yes, we have a kind of deployment. It's not staging and production because that kind of intermediate deployment is something we also use here locally in our company. So we are kind of testing it before going to real one.
Yeah, that makes sense. Great. Are there any more questions that we haven't touched on? Curious. Okay. David, I don't know if you are familiar with this. It might have been before your team, before you specifically worked on this application, but what other databases were, like what was the evaluation process? Like, did you look at other solutions before you selected CockroachDB, and what were those and why? I'm always curious how people end up with the product.
Okay, as we are using Google Cloud services, the natural fit was to use Google Cloud Spanner, but we felt that CockroachDB was better for our use case, because with Google Cloud Spanner you only have the option to deploy it in Google Cloud, so you are vendor locked. With CockroachDB you can deploy it wherever you want. And also CockroachDB is open source. It's written in Go, so we can look to the code and even fix bugs if we find them. And also it's using the Postgres wire protocol and the Postgres syntax. So they are kind of trying to not reinvent the wheel here, which is it's a huge plus for us. We don't have to learn new syntax to use CockroachDB.
Great. How big is your team? Like, how many people do you work on a daily basis?
I'm not sure I could share that information. Sorry.
That's totally fair. No, understood. Are there any questions? Are we good? Okay, cool. I think we've answered most of the questions. I'm going to follow up with Miguel about the Terraform operator. And is there one more follow-up? I think that was the main one I was going to follow up on. Great. Thank you everyone for joining. David, thank you so much for making time on a weekday afternoon on your side to share your experience.
It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. That was awesome. Cool. So there's a few resources that you can definitely check out. There's one that's for building a multi-region app on CockroachCloud that is in our docs, and we can send out the link after this. And it's a super helpful tutorial. That's pretty much, I think that's pretty much it. That's pretty much all we had. I just wanted to do like a really quick plug for this upcoming live stream we have on Twitch. We're experimenting with Twitch now, where we're gonna do like a coding live stream and anyone can join. So that's on March 13th. And it's also about building a multi-region app. So that could be relevant for some of you guys who have joined today. And then if you want to check out CockroachCloud, you can just get started on our website, cockroachlabs.com/cockroachcloud. And I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, and if there are any follow-up questions, we have a community Slack channel now, so that's
yeah.
a great place to just post questions as you're, trying on the product and have any questions. People, customers like David who've actually used the product are happy to chime in, or obviously any of our kind of engineering or employees within the company also help answer the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's
Great.
a good call.
All right.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for joining, and have a great rest of your day.